Okay, so I've got a really basic scene here that just has a plane and a cube, and I put a daylight object in here so that I can have something to sort of indicate what the materials are doing. And this particular camera view just gives me enough of a highlight kind of feature here on the top of the cube so I can see what the bumps and what some of the reflection settings might be. And I'm going to use this to test out substance materials. So this is something that was developed a couple of years ago and shipped with Max, I think in 2012 for the first time. And the intention is just to sort of give you some maps that could be edited within Max. So where you might have some experience with sort of tracking down a brick or a fence or concrete image, you know what that's like. Well, that can get you by. But what this does is it sort of gives you that initial image and then gives you the ability to edit it a little bit as well. So we're going to look at how that works. So we're going to hit the letter M here to bring up our material editor, as we always do. If it's the first time you've done that, it might just lag for a second. There we go. And we're just going to be practicing this with a standard material. So right at the top of the material map browser, where it says materials, just make sure that's expanded, and you'll see at the top of that list, we've got standard materials listed there. And we're just going to drag right where it says standard there. We're going to drag one of those into our view and start with this really basic material setting. Okay, now primarily we've been concerned with just three things, just three channels as far as materials are concerned, and that's kind of where we're going to leave our focus for today. The diffuse is the important one. Remember, that's kind of like the sticker. That's the decal that we put on the material. It's the one that gives the most information about what the material's like. But to enhance it a little bit, we're also going to add some bump, and then we're going to add some specular level here. Specular just means highlight. So if you were to hold, say, like a billiard ball up, and if you held it in the right place, you'd see that it had a little hot spot, a little highlight, based on the way the light was reflecting off of it. And that's just basically what specular is about. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the node next to diffuse color. And there's a bit of a trick to the sequence of clicks here. We're just going to click, hold down our left mouse button and drag, and then when we release, we'll have these three options here for what we can do to populate this channel. We're going to hover over standard, and then we're going to, instead of going up to bitmap where we've usually been before, we're going to drag down to substance. Now initially there won't be anything there. It'll just be kind of a black sample spot there. There's no map that's actually been selected yet. What we're going to do now is we're going to double click on the title here for the map, and that will bring up the properties for that map over here on the right. It happens to be a substance map, and before we see anything there we have to click on load substance. That'll bring you to this window, and then what we want is the textures folder. So double click on that. And now we've got, I believe there's about 80 of them in here. These are installed automatically into the program files for 3ds Max. And these are in here whether you had access to the player or not. That's a little extra that I'll show you in a bit here. But you can do everything even if you don't have that little extra plugin. So to start with, let's use, well, since I've mentioned it a few times, let's use the brick wall map here. So we'll use brick wall 02 and click on open, and you'll see here that it gives you this brick wall image. Fairly standard at this point, not really doing anything we haven't seen before, but the trick to this is that now that I've got that brick substance map loaded, I've got the ability to kind of manipulate it a little bit. So I'm going to double click on it, and then I'm going to drag down to the bottom of the properties window here. And if I manipulate, for example, the age, and I take it from 0.25 up to its maximum of 1, what it's doing here is it's adjusting the image to kind of mimic what would happen over time. So you can see those mortar joints go from being somewhat clean to getting a little bit sort of eroded and weathered. They're a lot darker. So you've got some ability to manipulate it there. And then you can also adjust, for example, the number of bricks in the X direction and the number of bricks in the Y direction. And the nice thing about this is it's aligning the edge of the brick right to the edge of the image. So before, without this, you had to kind of use the gizmo and the Uvw Map Modifier and manipulate that so that you had your mortar joints right at the edge of the object. Well, this does this automatically. There's a few more options here, things that we can manipulate. We can change, for example, the color. So where it says hue shift, if you want a brick wall of another color, you can manipulate that. You'll probably want to stay pretty close to the original color though. Some of them get looking a little hokey. And then we can also adjust the saturation and a few other things here. So then that's ready now to apply to our object, and we'll be applying this right to the box. That's ready for the moment, but I haven't really prepared my geometry yet. So if you remember, we have to have this extra step here where we're going to add a Uvw Map Modifier to the cube. So I'm going to temporarily shut this off, and I'm going to select the cube, and then I'm going to go to the Modify tab, which is that blue quarter circle, and then under Modifier List, I'll drag down to the bottom and add a Uvw Map Modifier. And then under Parameters for that Uvw Map Modifier, I'm going to switch from Planar to Box. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck the Real World Map Size box here. And then, just like we've seen before, what that does is now it makes the actual Uvw Map Modifier visible. And these orange lines, they just match up to the size of the box. So automatically they kind of match the size. And these orange lines basically represent where it's going to take the image that I apply and just stretch it out to those proportions. So now that that's selected, I'm going to kind of pull that to the side a bit. And then I'm going to hit M to bring up my material window again here. And I'm just going to go from the node on the material setting, drag there with my left mouse click button held down, and then just drag onto the box, and you'll see it change from its default color to this gray state. So it has the material applied now. If we want to actually see that map on the object, all we have to do is just double click on the map and then use this Show Shaded Material in Viewport, which is the checkerboard with the light bulb. And then in the viewport we'd see that brick map applied to the object. So again, a lot of that's pretty standard process, stuff we've done before. But what these substance materials are all about is the ability to kind of make some manipulations in a really easy way right inside of Max. If I wanted this to look a little different, wanted it to look a little more weathered or eroded, or different colors or different number of bricks, I'd probably be off to Photoshop to make that fix. So it's nice that I don't have to make those changes outside. I can just do them right here within Max. Another strength of this system is that I can also use that same map, that same information about the brick wall here, to populate the other channels. So in addition to having a diffuse color map, which is just the brick decal, as I've called it before, I can also, for example, take this bump channel and I can just thread that right into the bump channel on the material. And if you double click on the little swatch here, you'll see that what it's done is it's automatically made a black and white version of this diffuse color map. So before, when I had said, choose a material that you've got a black and white version of, because you need to use a black and white version of it when you do your bumps in your specular map. If it didn't exist, then you had to take it into Photoshop and knock out the color and save it as a different file. So this does that automatically, which is a nice little feature. I can make a bump map out of that brick wall, and I can also thread from specular into specular. I'll use the color specular channel, and again, if you double click on that, you can see that it's made a specular map version of that brick. Now, after I've applied those different maps to their appropriate channels, ultimately the control for all of those levels still lies in this one here. So these are the maps and they're threaded into their appropriate channels. But if I want to have different amounts of bump, or if I want to have different amounts of specular reflection, that's still controlled here in the main material setting. So if I double click there, you'll see that now down below in the material properties there's a section called maps, and there you can see the three channels that we've populated: diffuse, specular, and bump. And at the moment we've got 100% diffuse color, 100% specular color, and we've got 30% bump. So if we want to have a little bit more texture on that object, we could just crank this up to, say, 100. And now that that's all done, I'm going to go to my camera view, and I'm going to hit F9.